Hello, welcome to the Honest Heresy. I'm your host, Rob. In this video, we're going to be learning all about how to use reactions in the new Horus Heresy. Reactions are going to be a powerful tool for your army and also for your opponent's army. So we need to work out how we get reaction points, how we utilize them, and what ways we're going to be able to use it. We're only going to be covering the core reactions from the core rulebook today because the Libers and all the army books have also got their own unique reactions that are available to different armies and units, which is pretty cool actually. This opens up a lot of opportunity for dynamic play and even really helps out in the creativity of list writing. You can intentionally design units that you're going to use or try to use your reaction points on to get the most use out of them. So let's start with the basics. There are two players in a game of Horus Heresy. There's the active player and there's the reactive player. Reactions are obviously made by the reactive player. In order to do reactions, you need to use reaction points. Let's look at how we generate them. At the start of each player's turn, where they are the reactive player, you gain one reaction point, which is in your reaction allotment. This can potentially be increased by special rules. An obvious special rule that is going to grant you an additional reaction point is going to be the Master of the Legion trait that can be found on several models in the Space Marine roster. If your primary detachment or your Warlord detachment contains a model with that rule, you're going to gain an additional reaction point per turn. You'll gain an additional reaction point depending on the size of the battle as well. Seeing as most games will be somewhere between 1,500 and 3,000 points, you're probably looking at a reactive player having 3 reaction points per turn. These reaction points can obviously be spent on doing reactions, and we'll cover those in a bit. And at the end of your turn as the reactive player, all of your reactive points go away, so you don't get to just keep them. Let's talk about some restrictions also for which units can use reactions. No unit can make more than 1 reaction per turn, so you're going to have to be very careful which units you choose and plan ahead. Units with the stunned or routed tactical status or that are locked in combat cannot use reactions. And you can use as many reactions as you have reaction points. I got to be honest, 3 reactions feels like quite a lot to be able to use every turn, and I'm definitely going to have to make sure I write in the right units into my army to be able to use these as best as possible. There are some further restrictions to reactions as well, so we should cover them now. When you're making a reaction that involves shooting attacks made with a reaction need line of sight, including weapons with the Barrage X special rule. If you're making a shooting reaction with a vehicle, then they can only use defensive weapons. Defensive weapons normally are strength 6 or less designated as a defensive weapon. Shooting attacks that you make as part of a reaction also do not cause leadership checks when you reduce a unit below 25% of its models by causing casualties or wounds. Normally, the unit that you're attacking would have to make a check, but you're not going to be able to cause that through reactions. You also cannot apply statuses for shooting attacks as part of a reaction. I think that's quite an interesting point because it feels like you're going to really focus on raw output for these units making reactions versus trying to apply statuses. Units making shooting attacks as part of a reaction are considered stationary. Now, this is a big win because you can move in your turn, set your unit up perfectly so it can make exactly the right reaction and gain the bonuses from having remained stationary. Stationary is a status, not in the way tactical statuses are, but it's going to benefit your shooting massively. Limited X, like weapons like Hunter-Seeker missiles, are still expended when used as a reaction. So if you've got a limited number of a weapon type, you're still going to use it up when you're using a shooting reaction. When you're trying to use reactions that revolve around movement, any unit without an initiative characteristic or a value of 0 may not use reaction that lets you swap your initiative and your move. Difficult terrain does not affect moves made with initiative characteristic, but dangerous terrain tests must still be made. Most of the moving reactions are like a normal move that you would use in the movement phase. Those are the basic restrictions and how you generate points for reactions. Now we're going to look at the reactions. But first thing I'd like to say is, could you react to this video and drop me a like or leave me a comment? If the active player moves a unit within 12 inches and line of sight of you as the reactive player's unit, you can reposition with that unit. That will make the unit that is doing the reposition the reactive unit. What happens then is the active player resolves the whole movement for the unit that got within 12 inches, and then each model in your unit, as the reactive unit, can move up to the base value of its initiative characteristic. Then the active player just carries on with the movement phase. This could be a really clever tactic to use to hide a unit behind a piece of terrain or behind a vehicle, basically outside a line of sight, so maybe it can't get shot. Maybe you intend to intentionally move off a objective. So if your opponent, if you've got a line unit of Space Marines holding an objective, and then the Vanguard unit would be able to come over and hit you on that objective to be able to get some extra points, now you're not on it. There are so many clever little nuances and things that you can do with this that I think it's very, very cool. Maybe even move another unit closer for charges in the following turn if that's what you're aiming for. So there's lots of tricks here, and obviously in the future we'll try to cover those, and I'll try to make more detailed videos. But for now, reposition I think is going to be very useful. The next core reaction is return fire, and this costs 1 reaction point, and it's done in the shooting phase. In step 3 of the shooting phase, for any shooting attack made by the active player, you can pick a reactive player's unit that was the target, and you can make that the reactive unit. The active player then resolves all of the shooting attacks for the target unit up to step 11. So they take their unit, they shoot at your unit, but you've declared that you are going to return fire. You, as the reactive player, then resolves a shooting attack with the reacting unit, including models that have been reduced to 0 wounds. Then you resolve step 11, which is removing casualties. Obviously, this is going to be a very powerful tool. Your opponent tries to whittle down how many models you have in your very expensive unit or your big shooting block, and then you shoot back and you do a bunch of damage as well. This is one of those reactions that I think people are going to intentionally build into. It means you can take something very expensive. It doesn't matter if your opponent shoots you first, you're going to get to shoot them back, which is pretty cool. The next core reaction we're going to look at is Overwatch. It costs 1 reaction point, and it's done in the assault phase. You, as the reactive player, choose a friendly unit that was the target of a charge, and that unit becomes the reactive unit. During the charge phase, a unit is able to make a setup move, and then it makes a bunch of volley shots with its assault weapons. You, as the reactive player, can choose, instead of returning fire with volley shots, can instead use Overwatch and fire your normal weapons at your normal ballistic skill. Your opponent can't use cover or shrouded tests to cover against those shots. And then if they have any unit left alive, then you continue the charge sequence. Again, as the reactive player, an incredibly powerful ability. We can make it so that if our opponent tries to shoot us, we can shoot them back. And if our opponent tries to charge us, we can also whittle down how many models they have in their unit when they try to charge us. It really does matter what weapons you have on your overwatching unit. And again, you might decide to try and build a very clever unit that's going to sit on an objective and is just going to overwatch anything that tries to charge it. This isn't going to help you if your opponent is doing multi-charges though, because once you're locked in combat, you're not going to be able to make any more reactions. However, there is a bonus in that when you do make a reaction with a shooting attack, you are going to count as being stationary. So if any of the weapons you've equipped your unit with gain any bonuses for remaining stationary, you're going to gain those while you're using this reaction. So you could end up with a very competent shooting unit in your opponent's turn. The next set of reactions we are going to look at are classified as advanced reactions. So if you're stupid like me, don't try these because they're too advanced for us. The first reaction is Death or Glory, and it's done in the movement phase and costs 1 reaction point. As the reactive player, you can declare Death or Glory whenever an active player moves a vehicle through an enemy unit. The vehicle becomes the target unit, and the unit that it moved through becomes the reactive unit. So the target model, which is the vehicle, must halt its move in base contact with the reacting unit. As the reactive player, you can nominate 1 non-vehicle model in the reactive unit to be the attacking model. You automatically hit with either a ranged or melee weapon equal to the normal amount of attacks that that weapon has, and these are resolved against the vehicle's front armor. If the target is removed or is pinned, then nothing else happens. However, if the target is not removed and it is not pinned, then the attacking model is removed from play as a casualty with 0 saves allowed. This is an awesome reaction, not necessarily because of its power, but because of what it does thematically in a game. It's fun, it's engaging. I have a big, massive hero in a unit, you move over the unit, and then I try to punch your vehicle out of the game. That's awesome. Death or Glory. I already want to scream it. This is very cool. Also, obviously, moving vehicles through units does mean that you take damage on those units. So it's going to be a genuine tactic that people are going to use anyway. So it's very smart maybe to have a model in your unit that could take that last whole point off a vehicle. So there's some really fun tactical counterplay in how you're building lists and units and models even. but also it's super fun and I'm ready for this. This is very cool. The next advanced tactic is called Intercept. It costs 1 reaction point and it's done in the reserve move subphase. When the active player brings a target unit in from reserves or aerial reserves, the reactive player can react with 1 reactive unit in line of sight of the target. So just a quick note, if you weren't aware, during the Horus Heresy, you're able to bring units in from reserve, sometimes via deep strike, sometimes via just reserve moves, and sometimes a plane can come on in aerial reserves. This allows you an opportunity to attack that unit when it arrives. The reactive unit can make a shooting attack as snapshots or defensive weapons for a vehicle only at the target unit. This, along with Overwatch and also Return Fire, gives you an opportunity to do a lot of shooting in your opponent's turn. However, Intercept is obviously stipulation-based in that your opponent needs to bring a unit on from reserve for you to be able to use it. Return Fire is also pretty heavy stipulated in that you need line of sight. So if your opponent's just hitting you with barrage weapons from behind a building, there's not much you can do about that. But it does feel like if you can set it up right, you're going to be able to do a lot of shooting in your opponent's turn with at least the 3 reaction points you're likely to have. The next reaction is called Evade. It costs 1 reaction point and it is done in the charge subphase. So at the end of step 4 of the charge subphase, the reactive player can pick a reactive unit that is being charged by the target unit. After both units have made their volley attacks, the reactive unit can make a move for each model. This is important for when it happens in a charge sequence. What happens is a charging unit makes a setup move, then it makes a volley attack. You then also can make a volley attack, and then you can now use this ability to move. Each model can move its initiative characteristic, but must maintain its coherency. This means each one of your units in the reactive unit can move up to its initiative value away from the charging unit. Now, that charging unit is very likely to fail its charge and not get in. If this unit has failed the charge is just failed. We now have 2 very powerful abilities to make it so that our opponent isn't necessarily going to get into close combat with our units. Our next reaction is called Nullify, and it costs us 1 reaction point. And it's done when you fail to nullify a psychic curse. When you fail to nullify a psychic curse, you can pick a reactive model, either on its own or in a unit with the psycho trait that has line of sight to the target unit that cast the psychic curse. You subtract the willpower of the psychic curse's focus, that means the model that cast it, from the willpower of the reacting model. So that's your unit with the psychic trait. So then the reactive model, that's your unit that's trying to use Nullify, makes a willpower check applying the power modifier. That means the difference between your willpower and the willpower of the unit that's casting it. So what you really want to do is you want to use a Nullify reaction with a unit that has higher willpower than the unit that's casting the psychic curse. If you pass the willpower check, then the curse is stopped. And if you fail the check, obviously the curse continues. This is one of those situations where maybe you should have been able to stop a psychic curse, but your dice didn't go your way. Really, it gives you an opportunity to spend a reaction point and make it go your way. The next advanced reaction is Heroic Intervention, and it costs 1 reaction point. It's done in the challenge subphase of the fight phase. Normally what happens is when you select a combat, the active player gets to pick a model that's eligible to issue a challenge. If they decide to skip this step, then you can use Heroic Intervention. What happens is then the reactive player declares a challenge with 1 eligible model in the unit. So you as the reactive player pick 1 model in your unit. The active player can select 1 eligible model from their unit to accept the challenge. If the active player refuses, obviously they're a coward, the reactive player then chooses an eligible model from the active player's unit to gain the disgraced status. The disgraced status is pretty rough. A model with a disgrace status halves its weapon skill and the leadership characteristic until the end of the assault phase. If they've turned down the challenge and gained the disgrace status, then you just carry on with the combat. If the active player obviously does accept the challenge though, you just go on to doing the challenges, which is obviously really fun. This is clearly also a really cool ability if you have a much better character in your unit to challenge out their character that's going to help you with combat resolution. Our last advanced reaction is Combat Air Patrol, and it costs 1 reaction point. So in the reserve subphase of the movement phase, when an active player brings a unit into play from aerial reserves, you can bring on an Interceptor. Interceptor is a trait that you can find on units like the Xiphon Intercept Fighter. So when the active player brings in a unit from aerial reserves, then you can use this reaction on an interceptor model. Once declared, you pick a target. That interceptor becomes the reacting unit. Once the target model has completed its movement of its combat mission, and this is quite an important stipulation, so not just then in the reserve move, but later when it's completed its move of the combat mission. But before any models disembark, the reacting unit may place the interceptor anywhere on the battlefield edge and then move it directly forward a number of inches equal to its movement. Once this move has been done, the interceptor may make a single shooting attack against the target model. It's worth remembering, when you make a shooting attack with a unit as a reaction, that counts as having been stationary. And once it's done its shooting attack, the interceptor is removed from play and put back into aerial reserves. Understanding how to use the economy of your reaction points is going to be pretty intrinsic to working out how to play the game well. What's also really fun about this is you don't necessarily have to lean into the things that seem obviously very strong, like being able to return fire or be able to use Overwatch really, really well. Instead, there's some really fun things here, like being able to do heroic intervention. Death or Glory also feels like it'll be really fun. And I think there's going to be some real skill and nuance in being able to use evade and also reposition really well. Baiting units out that are trying to charge you so you can countercharge them later, I think will be very, very clever. So those are the basics of reactions. And obviously there's loads more to go through when we look through the different Libers and different army books and the reactions that they can take as well. But this is something to remind yourself about. And when you get into the list writing stage of the game, just to get excited and be like, which units are you going to try and use for all of the different reactions that you can possibly do? Let me know any units that you are really excited about using these reactions on in the comments below. I'd be very excited to read them. And I want to say thanks again to everyone on the Horus Heresy Patreon for supporting me. This has been a great journey. And let me know what other rules you're excited for me to cover and what other breakdowns you're looking for me to do, apart from emotional breakdowns. Anyway, thanks for watching my video, and I'll see you soon.